let's get started with the Nigerian News Direct. Nigerian News Direct 2027, as American would say, 2020. 2027, Coalition of Hunger, not Rescue. 2027, Coalition of Hunger, not Rescue. Wike blast to be Atiku, Regbeshola, other ADC leaders. Wike blast to be Atiku, Regbeshola, other ADC, I should say, leaders. The writers accuses coalition leaders of selfish politics, failed leadership legacies. Says Peter Obi's time has passed. Labour Party coalition with ADC, not anti-party, according to Obi. So this is a fallout of two things, guys. What happened yesterday, I think, at the church service, as well as the interview he granted our sister program on Friday in his right of reply to Rotimi Amechi and all of this. So for me, I call all of this talk political hot air, and it's allowed. If the tables were to be turned, this is the same thing the people in the ADC coalition will be saying about Bola Tinubu and the rest of them. That they can't solve no problem. In fact, by now they were saying Bola Tinubu is an imperialist, he's state captured. That would have been the other narrative. So now the tables have turned. So we know who accuses what for. But as a Nigerian, as a journalist, we want to begin to see ideas fly in the room. It's within these people's rights to call. In fact, as I'm sure as all of us are here, we can't wait for a viable opposition, because we've been at the vanguard of opposition in the sense of being critical of government. But that's our job. We're supposed to be the third layer in terms of looking at critical activities of government. The opposition first from the National Assembly, and then the political party, and then we should have civil society organization. The media plays a role of putting everybody on the table so that the audience can make an objective position. But right now, we don't even know what's the position of the PDP. We don't even know where Labour Party is in terms of all of this struggle. We can go on and on and on and on. I'm talking about the big parties now, because we have about 19 political parties. So this seems like a semblance, guys, of what it should be an opposition. Whether they failed or they succeeded, we're going to now probe their personal lives and their personal contribution. So Wike is blasting them. But what I remember with this is, I'm not quite comfortable with the issue of politicians amassing wealth without being able to explain it. I remember Shenwu did ask Rotimi Amechi how he made money. Let me just paraphrase it. There was nothing really of substance that I heard, besides the fact that his wife is a trader, she's an industrialist. So Shona asked him, is she the one running, funding the home in that sense? And I don't want to go into that detail, but something fundamental to say, the money you have now, how did you make it? Because almost all your life you've been in politics. And when it got to Nyesom Wike's turn, it was almost the same thing, and literally almost worse. At some point, they say you are rich, you have a lot of money, you are corrupt. How did you make all of this money? He said, well, when he was a student, he drove Mercedes-Benz. Sir, that is not the answer to the question.
How did you something about his father being a manager?
Yes, that's on one hand. And then I said his father was a general manager of many companies. Well, some people have disputed that. Well, by the end of the day, that doesn't explain the kind of wealth you have right now. That's why they talk about wealth to that enterprise. Is this one of it? Even President Bola Tinubu was asked that question during the campaign. It was also an issue. I think the explanation he gave was the fact that he worked with an oil company, and then he's on some real estate or some shares and his stocks and all of that. But compared all of that you did to the kind of money you have now, it leaves much to be desired as to the ability of politicians in this generation to explain how they made their money. And it's something those of us who are journalists who have to probe. We can't let go. Because if we say we should bring out all of the monies these gentlemen have, you'll be shocked. Their net worth. Some hidden, some somewhere, and all of that. Yes, a lot of them. So there's no crime in making money. Just explain to us how you made your money. So with all of the people I've listed so far, I do not think any of them gave us a satisfactory answer as to how they make their money. So that should be a premise to question their leadership as well.
And Jeffrey, everyone has a responsibility to play where the demand for accountability is concerned. And perhaps the opposition has a lot to learn beyond running the race to occupy the top office in 2027, providing opposition, credible opposition, in fact, critical opposition. I recall the days when the APC was in the opposition. They put the feet of the ruling party to fire through statements, through very critical questions on policy approaches of governance, and in fact the role of public officers in their specific offices, and that also put the ruling party on their toes. Perhaps that's what we're going to be seeing in the coming days, now that the table has turned, as Jeffrey has indeed observed, such that we'll now begin to see more accountability, more prudent expenditure of resources to the areas where they need it. But let's look more at other papers this morning and see what they're saying. Let's go to the New Telegraph. The New Telegraph focuses rather on security and takes a departure from the coalition subject. Killings. Tinubu orders military to confront terrorists, bandits, and there are a few insights into where and what is happening here. Reaffirms commitment to armed forces welfare, operational capacity. Lawyers seek scrapping of security vote, say not backed by law. You'll find details on pages 4, pages 14 and 16. That's the inside pages of the Nigerian New Telegraph. Of course, I believe this is coming on the back of the Nigerian Army Day celebration. July the 6th of every year is when the Nigerian Armed Forces celebrates the establishment of the force. And of course, we must also use this opportunity to commend the armed forces for the incredible work that they do in order to ensure that all Nigerians keep their eyes open, particularly at this point in time when there are battles on many fronts in Nigeria, many critical areas, regions, northeast, northwest, north central, and the job of work that the armed forces are doing to ensure that Nigerians remain protected and defend the territorial integrities, regardless the territorial integrity of the country, regardless of the challenges that they are currently going through. We see you and we commend you for your work. That's it for the Nigerian the News Telegraph this morning. Kari, you have others.
Oh yes, from the New Telegraph, let's head over to what the Guardian has to say this morning. And the Guardian is talking business, really, particularly the oil sector. You see, oil theft eases despite $25.7 billion losses in 23 years as operators turn to barges. And you see the trend of crude oil losses per barrels now. 2023, 24, 25 has been at about 11 million barrels. That's what you see, the trend reducing to prior to or before that. In 2022 we had 57. In 2021 we had 102 million barrels. So it's been reduced according to this report, but then you see the $25.7 billion losses in 23 years. So are we going to recover that? Is that water under the bridge, or crude oil under the bridge in that sense? Page 6 has more details for you on that big story. But it looks like there may be tension brewing. In case you've been asking, where has the NLC been? The NLC president, has he been quiet? It's been a while you heard from him. Well, there's a story on the front page says that NLC warns against removal of labor issues from exclusive legislative list. Who? Or is that going to be a deal breaker with the constitutional review? If it's being removed, or if the proposal is to remove it from the exclusive, it's going to the concurrent. So does that mean that the federal government, wouldn't have powers? States can decide in that sense. Well, it's page 4, and it's going to be a whole debate, definitely, for the constitutional amendment.
And it's going to have huge consequences, Kadi, for the negotiations of the 5-yearly review of the minimum wage. And I believe that, the NLC at the national level is the only body that has the spine to challenge that, because state chapters of the Congress and other, labor affiliates are at the chokehold of the executives at the subnationals. I doubt that they can bring to bear any strength, to contest this at the state level. Maybe they can hide under the, apron strings of the national, but even the national has had its fair share of challenges in recent times when it comes to, taking on the national government on labor matters. But let's move on to other papers now. Jeffrey, you have the next one.
Let's go to, I think, the Vanguard newspaper. Let's head to the Vanguard newspaper. ADC begins takeover of PDP structures in northern states. This is interesting, guys. ADC begins takeover of PDP structures in northern states. PDP calls defection to APC good riddance. I'm loyal to APC. Zulum dismisses defection rumor. Why Obi is still committed to LP, according to his source. Atiku El-Rufai, Obi's coalition is a fraud. APC spokesperson, that's APC scribe.
Felix Moka.
Felix Moka. FG's reforms were mere optics rather, not solutions, according to ADC. You failed as Interior Minister. Wike tackles Aregbesola. I'm still in LP. Peter Obi. So page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper is where you see all of this back and forth as to what the Vanguard newspaper is saying. But guys, the first test of the popularity of the ADC is who they will be backing as far as the Anambra. Maybe we can overlook the Anambra election. Maybe the next set of elections.
I think they should just, this is free advice. Just let the Anambra election slide.
Let's see. Maybe the Anambra election is quite early. So, Osun and other elections are the real test, because let me sound like Nyesom Wike on this one. The way Nyesom Wike assesses, what do you call it? Your mastery, your dominance, your power in terms of your ability to control structure is how many local government did you win? Did you win your states? Such things. So, but what I'm trying to say in essence is, if you say you are influential, and there's a point in that when it comes to politics, how many of the local government were you able to influence in terms of victory? How many houses of assembly were you able to influence? Which governor were able to, quote and unquote, install? Let me use a non-democratic word in that sense. So the next elections in maybe next year will be the first test as to whether or not this ADC rather, and this is a bit confusing, ADC, APC, they're quite close. Okay, it's going to be the first test as to how powerful, how influential, what they can bring to the table ahead of the 2027 presidential election. Because trust me, if they don't do well in those off-cycle elections, Wike will take them to the cleaners. I can guarantee them that for free. So if you want more on the pages of the Vanguard newspaper, page 5 is how you find out where everybody's throwing jabs of every other person, APC at ADC, ADC at APC. At least there's a lot to talk about, but let's get to the issue of substance. That's what I'm looking for, guys.
And the last, but not the last on the newspaper review segment would be This Nigeria newspaper. This Nigeria leads with something entirely different. Where is the missing 6 trillion naira in NDDC audit report? SERAP asks Tinubu to prosecute officials, persons involved in alleged sleaze. And don't forget also, over the weekend, during the back and forth between, the former governors of River State, Rotimi Amechi, and his successor in that line, Nyesom Wike. Mr. Nyesom Wike had challenged, Mr. President, I had asked Mr. President to release the NDDC report, accusing his predecessor in office of using his spouse, to siphon funds sort of for the training of women in NDDC to the tune of 5 billion naira.
4 billion.
4 12 billion naira
monthly
per month, amounting to about 48 billion naira by his calculation over a period. And so we haven't had former minister and former governor of River State, Rotimi Amaechi, respond to that. Of course, when he does, it's bound to be, an interesting exchange of words between both politicians from River State in the coming days. But SERAP is asking more critical questions, and that is even more important than the accusations flying between the two political henchmen from Rivers. Critical questions of accountability that past administrations have failed to probe about, series of abandoned projects dotting the, entire NDDC landscape in the last, decades of the establishment of the NDDC. So those are more critical questions. Who are the contractors that handle those projects? What's going to happen to some of the projects that remain abandoned, that haven't been executed? Where monies disbursed, especially. So questions of accountability as far as NDDC is concerned.
Indeed. We have just one more for you, actually. The Abuja Inquirer. Let's take a look at what the Abuja Inquirer has to say about the nation's capital. You see, Wike steps up attack against Mark Amaechi, Obi, others, says they're after their stomach, not Nigerian. So it's something you see across all the front pages this morning. But I must mention that story in red. No respite for pupils in FCT. So we're still keeping our eyes on that story. It's a disaster, really, in the education sector there, particularly at that foundational level. So we're not closing the chapter on that, and we hope that it's resolved this week.
That's very sad.
Well, there you have it. That's the front page of the Abuja Inquirer for you this morning. And a look at the dailies. We're starting off with a big conversation in just a moment, so stay with us right here. This is the Morning Brief.